Hey, how's it going, Wizard? You in the mood for some more thermals? Today we'll be taking a look at the Zeiss handheld thermal lineup with the DTI 125, 335 Gen 2, and 450. And hopefully by comparing all these different levels of thermals, you can kind of get an idea of which ones would fit you best. All right though, let's get started. So like I said, today we're going to be going over like the entire Zeiss handheld thermal lineup. And I think it's important to understand both like the power and the potency of like a small handheld thermal, particularly when you're looking through the lens of like a tactical mindset. As a thermal device really expands your target identification to like superhuman levels, allowing you to quickly and easily scan and identify where a target may be located. And having that feature set in a handheld that can be like thrown in a pocket, well, that just offers a ton of feature sets from law enforcement to military applications. We've unfortunately seen some military forces engaging with civilians, and it should be noted that those military forces engaging them are very likely using thermal technology. So a handheld thermal like the Zeiss ones or some of the other ones we've shown you can be a real force equalizer when it comes to near-peer adversaries. And it's something I'll tell you really should think of as a must-have in your gear arsenal. It's just a wild tool in terms of its application, and it would add a significant level of concern to an opposing force if they know that you have thermals also. I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse, I just want you to understand that thermals are a real force multiplier. A single guy with a thermal is a problem. But let's go ahead and pivot and talk a little bit about who Zeiss is, in case you joined the human race today. Zeiss is a pioneering force in the world of optics, with a combination of precision and sustainability to give users cutting-edge solutions at a top-tier value. And I think that's one of the cool things we're showing today is like this wide spectrum of different product choices, all the way down from like a lower tier to like a much more expensive and higher-end sensors and detection capabilities. I think there really is kind of that sweet spot though, and I kind of want to hear from you all. So put down in your comments which one you'd kind of pick, like which one kind of solves all the different things, like has the right price and performance for you, and let me know down in the comments as we go through all of them. And I'm excited to tear into this because I've seen like a thermal before, but not like a Zeiss thermal. Now, they all come with the same stuff, so let's go ahead and tear into it and see what all comes in the box.
So here we'll open up the 335 Gen 2, take this little cover off, and then take the little lid off. Inside we have 2 + 1 = 3. Don't know what that means. Back here we have the accessories back. I mean, I do know what 2 + 1 = 3 means. I just don't know why it's there. Inside of here looks like a bunch. This looks like a lanyard, like a little camera cover. And then we have the instructions. We're not going to go through these. You can read through these quick guides and everything. It's very thick. There's a lot of information on these. A ton of stuff here. Another lens cleaner. We don't need that. We have so many lens cleaners. And this is, I think this is the actual like bag strap, where the other one was actually for your neck, like the lanyard. And then our USB cable. We have a ton of these, so we'll just put this back in here and give that back to them. So here's the actual case, and 2 + 1 = 3. We'll just ignore that. The actual case it comes with is pretty nice. It's a nice little padded case. See, I think these things on the back is where you connect in that other lanyard piece. It's all zippered though. It's all really nice. Yeah, that's where you connect those in. Pretty sure anyway. You just unzipper this front. It comes with this nice little padded cover to keep everything protected. But then that's how you get the actual optic out. And we'll go through this in more detail in a second. But that's everything you get.
And as I said, you get the same bag and all the same goodies. So it's a pretty big hat tip from Zeiss that you get all the same stuff included no matter what tier you buy. But tell you what, let's put it all on the bench and let's look at this thermal up close and see all its features. Now though, same as what's included, all three thermals also have the same like functions and controls also. So actually then we'll just look at the 335 Gen 2 up close and then we'll compare it to the other two at the end and kind of see all three spread out and see the differences. Here's our 335 up close, but here, I'll prove it to you that all three handhelds really do have the same features and controls. I really like you get the same top-tier functionality regardless of which model fits your budget and needs. Starting at the rear of the thermal, we see the 335 ditch the standard binocular eyepiece for this integrated eye shroud design. And you really have to see a whole lot of thermals to understand just like how much this makes the device overall just a ton more useful. Like, you guys don't get to see it at home, but one of the hardest things to do is to actually see the thermal on a sunny day. Like having that bright light in your eye and then trying to see a screen within the device, well, it can definitely get problematic. So that eyepiece design helps to shield some of that sunlight so you can actually see the screen really well in a bright day. It's all super smart. Moving on though, next we have our ID marker of the model number on the ring by the eyepiece. Then moving upward, we have our diopter. Now, this is extremely useful as it brings the image closer or further from your eye. You adjust this to get the perfect distance for your eyes or glasses. So even with our OpsCore step-in visor, we can adjust our diopter for the correct viewing distance, or change it if we move to a different optics configuration. Along the bottom is the connection point for the included lanyard. And I didn't end up hooking that up, but it would be pretty awesome in like a hunting or a tactical environment to just be able to reach down and have your thermal ready at any time. Wait, why didn't I connect in the lanyard? Continuing down to the rear of the device, we see our USB-C connection. This is used to charge the device and to access the internal memory. We also see a personal favorite with the included tripod mount. And I think you're gonna see from all my shaky footage, like just how useful this would be. Like you could set it up on a tripod and you could have some really high-end, like quality footage, like, I don't know, like if you're doing recon. Or even have it like set up remotely and then access it from your phone. I'll tell you what, that would be pretty sweet too. We also notice the entire bottom of the device has this rubberized coating to give a really positive grip in the hand. The same rubberized coating also flows into the top of the handheld device to give a really great feel to the entire system. Moving up, we have our device controls. I'll actually start at the top as this is our power on and our standby controls. So you could like turn on the device and have it powered on, but then like place it in standby so it doesn't use as much power. And then when you go to actually use it, you don't have to like boot up the entire device again. Plus there's actually a pretty cool shake to wake feature on like the 335 and the 450, I believe it is, that actually works like a lot of red dots where it actually goes into standby unless you actually like pick it up and move it and then it actually turns on. It's pretty slick. Going back though, the circle button is your capture button. Tap it to take a photo or hold it down to begin recording footage. The left and right buttons zoom the image, with the right button increasing your zoom from 1 to 4x in 0.5 increments. This last button is one of my favorites as it gives you a fast color mode selector, allowing the user to quickly swap between color modes when scanning. If you hold this button down, you also get into all the device menu functions. And the Zeiss device doesn't actually let me record all the different device menus, so I'll just be brief in going over that again. I know many of you are completely heartbroken about that, but I do actually like going through all the controls though. At the front of the device, we see our lens cover. This is a nice rubberized coating and uses a form-fit seal. The lens cover itself doesn't include a magnet or any neat storage, so the cover just kind of dangles there. It's not a huge deal. I mean, you won't lose it, but it would have been pretty neat if they had some sort of like magnetic integration where the cover itself like connects into like the side of the housing. Moving to the front lens, we see a feature we usually only see on top-end handhelds, and that's with the optical focus ring. This ring has the same nice rubberized coating as the lens cover to give a tactile grip that allows for easy adjustment and focusing. It seems small, but spending like thermal handheld money to get one with a fixed focus, I don't know, for me that would definitely result in some buyer remorse. Like if the fixed focus was set at like some arbitrary, I don't know, 50 yards, good luck at seeing anything up close. The adjustable focus is just a must-have to me if you're gonna be using a thermal in any sort of realistic capacity. And looking at all the tiers of the devices together, we see that they all have that same front focus ring along with the same controls. You also see the same rubberized coating with the same overall ergonomic designs. What we mostly see is an increase in size, with the 450 being bigger due to the larger sensor and lenses. Looking at all three, none of them felt unwieldy, but the 335 just felt like the right balance of being the right amount of technical power and size. Now though, I definitely take the 450 without complaining, but I definitely have to figure out how to actually like store that in all my gear. Whereas I think the 335 could go just about anywhere, just like throw it in a pocket. So that's the device up close and all the different features that are included. But let's tear into the actual tech specs and let's see if the power of the 450 actually makes that larger housing more worthwhile. Here, looking at the different thermal sensors, we really get into the meat and potatoes of the price difference. The 125 and 335 have the same 384 by 288 sensor, which is half the sensor resolution of the 640 by 480 sensor in the 450. And I'm kind of surprised that the 335 has the same sensor as the 125, as the image in the 335 is dramatically better. And here, I probably would have gone online and seen that the 125 stats are pretty much the same as the 335, and probably would have ended up purchasing the 125. But that 335 Gen 2 image and sensor just seems far superior to the 125. Even comparing the 335 to the big boy 450, the image just isn't quite as refined, but it is completely acceptable. The 335 just has my heart at this point. It's just checking the boxes of like performance, size, and price. Now the screens have me a bit confused as the 125 has a better resolution listed, but it's a worse display type. And I think the website's just wrong because the 335 and the 450 look just absolutely amazing through the viewfinders, whereas the 125 is, I don't know, kind of blocky. So yeah, I don't know what's up with the stats, but even looking at the screens, the 335 is definitely still in the lead for me. Moving to the NETD values, we again see similar numbers with the 125 and 335 at an NETD value of 35 millikelvin, placing both those devices in the good category, and the 450 with an NETD of 25 millikelvin, placing it in the excellent category. And I will say that the 450 was able to pick up on some super faint temperature changes up close, giving even some high-end pulsar thermals we've seen a run for their money. But I did notice that as the distance increases, that NETD advantage kind of becomes, I don't know, less and less. I will say the lower NETD and lower sensors had a lot more difficulty with thermal hides, where the 450 sensor would force the wearer to have to stay much further away to remain undetected. Moving to zoom and focus, we noted the focus capability across all three devices that we loved, and all three devices also have the same 4x zoom with that 0.5 zoom increment. Now the better sensor of the 450 makes the zoom function far more usable. The 384 sensor can't really do much beyond 2x, and going further results in a pretty mess of pixels. So you could tell if somebody was like out there, but not like what kind of hat they were wearing. But from a balance of like size and sensor and power, the 335 would still allow me to know something is out there, be able to track them and identify their position. But then if you needed to bump up, you could always use the 450 as an option if you just need that crystal clear thermal image for those further distances. And at this point, I'm kind of curious after we've seen these different feature sets where you're all kind of leaning, like if you're like me with a 335 or if you're leaning more into like the 450. But let's keep moving, and next we'll go over all the different menus and the functions of all the different devices. Don't worry, I promise I'll be nice. Here, I'll overlay the different menu functions and what they do. One thing to note is that the 335 and 450 share all the same functions, where the 125 doesn't have the movement alert function. And we're again seeing a pretty crazy advantage of the 335 over the 125, as I think that shake to wake function would be extremely useful for battery savings, particularly if I'm out in the field. It is nice to see that they do all have Wi-Fi, so they're all able to connect into like the Zeiss app, and you can watch all the different displays on your phone, regardless of which model you have. And I know I mentioned it earlier, but just from a tactical standpoint of being able to set up a thermal on a tripod and being able to watch it remotely is pretty awesome. But let's move into the next category and look into storage and connections. As we noted in the close-up, all three devices use internal storage that is accessed via the USB-C connection. The 125 has 8 gigabytes of storage, and the 335 and 450 both have 32 gigabytes of storage. And yeah, that's another point for the 335, but I will say that with all these devices, like we recorded all of this footage and never actually downloaded them off the devices until we went to the actual end of the review. So 8 gigabytes is still a ton, and you're not gonna run out of room. 32 gigabytes is just like an absolute massive amount. All right, so next category is actually gonna be special features. Now, there's no like crazy like range finders or totally nuts things going on here. So we're just gonna skip this section, and instead we're gonna go into batteries and battery life. All three devices have an internal lithium-ion battery, with the 125 boasting 6.5 hours, the 335 at 8 hours, and 450 at 7 hours. And I think we can just chuck in one more win for the 335 while we're looking at batteries. 6 to 8 hours of runtime, it seems like plenty, but I really would have liked to seen some sort of like hot swappable battery. Having an internal battery means I'd need to bring some sort of external battery pack like this Dark Energy Poseidon. Just be aware you're gonna need some more juice. As having like a multi-day hunting trip with 8 hours of runtime, well, that's just not gonna cut it on its own. All right though, next category, let's look at the available color patterns. Again, all the devices use the same pattern, so I'll use the nicer 450 to show these. The patterns are similar but different from pulsar patterns we've seen in the past. But we have our white hot, black hot, red hot, which is a personal favorite, rainbow, green hue, red hue, dark hue, and a uniquely useful night eye. And I really didn't love like the red hue or the green hue ones, kind of like the weird, violet and sepia ones that Pulsar has. I'd have to say the white hot, black hot, red hot, and that night eye were definitely the most impressive on all these devices. And the color modes is a good segue. Let's look at the actual short range function and see how these guys do. Here we're able to see that all the thermals performed well, with the 335 and 450 providing additional clarity and detail to the image. Moving through the different thermal views, we see how the image fidelity is impacted by the quality of the electronics in each of the devices. And up close, like kind of inside that 100-yard range, I don't think it really matters which one of the thermals you use. Like, you know it's a person and you know kind of what they're up to. With the 450, you just be able to make out a lot more of like what they're holding and what equipment may be on them. Moving to long range, we start to really see the limitations of the lower end 388 sensor. The 450 offers a much cleaner image, but I'm actually quite surprised how well both the 125 and 335 are keeping up when we compare these images side by side. And here I think is where we're getting to the interesting question of like, how much do you want to pay is kind of related to how much detail do you want? As there's a difference in detail, but they can all three detect an individual about the same. Now though, we did see that detail becomes a lot more important if we were using any sort of thermal mitigation devices. So you have to tell me what you think about that. But let's move into the pros and cons, and the first pro I think is one of the coolest one is the consistency of features throughout the entire lineup. Zeiss doesn't sell you a neutered budget tier and instead gives you the same focus ring, packaging, and ergonomics throughout the entire lineup, giving users the same premium experience Zeiss is known for, regardless of which product tier the user chooses. And it just says a lot about the products that Zeiss is selling you if the lowest tier and the highest tier are so close in what all they offer you. Now, the next pro I want to talk about is one that I've wanted forever, and that's that quick swappable color modes. I love being able to scan an area and just click one button to swap between different modes, making it easy to identify targets that may be difficult to detect if you weren't in the correct color mode. I think it's really just like full-on predator mode. All right, though, my next big pro is going to be the size and the ergonomics. The Zeiss DTI Thermal lineup has a size that makes it easy to add to your tactical or law enforcement equipment. With a compact and sleek design, you don't have to worry about bulky edges when adding this into your kit. And I'll tell you right now that 335 is just a perfect fit for a cargo pocket. Now though, everything that has a pro should also have a con, and these thermals do have a few, and the first one I want to touch on is that internal battery. Without a swappable battery, the Zeiss DTI functionality is limited by how much power you're willing to bring with you. And having a quick swappable battery would just be awesome, but maybe it's one of the concessions Zeiss had to make to get like the uniform build between all the different models. I don't know. The next con I want to talk about is some of the different color modes. There are quite a few color modes that are superb, from white hot, black hot, red hot, and the others, but there's also a splattering of poor colorways such as greens and reds. And these less useful colorways are further highlighted when you have to cycle through all of them to get to the colorway you want. I also want to note that the 125 rainbow resolution is almost unusable. The data being shown to the user is just impossible to make sense of, particularly when you compare it to the 450. And it's just kind of frustrating that you can't just pick the colorway that you want. You have to cycle all the way through them. But it is a pretty fair trade for that Predator vision swap on just a single button whenever I want. So after all that, what are my thoughts about the entire Zeiss DTI Thermal Handheld lineup? I think Zeiss offers consumers a lineup of thermals that gives users options for various budgets, supplying high-tier thermal capabilities and functions at the budget 125, all the way up to the detail powerhouse of the 450. For me, I found the 335 was just consistently the perfect blend of price, size, performance, and function. And the 335 would just give me this wild functionality in terms of thermal performance and then just fit right inside a pocket. But I hope this review of the Zeiss DTI Thermal lineup was helpful in your purchasing decisions. I want to say thanks to all of our Patreon supporters and to all our YouTube members. You guys make it possible that we can play with all sorts of crazy thermals and all this stuff. And I want to say thanks to everyone that likes, comments, and subscribes. Comment down below which Zeiss thermal you would pick. I want to hear about it. Or if you have a different one that you want. All right, everyone, Walsh out. Zeiss is a pioneering force in the world of optics. Hold on. I had this smart idea to come out here. It's windy. It's cold. That's all I have to say about that. I don't know if it's a good idea. It looks cool, though. I think it looks pretty cool. All right, get out of here.